Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Always love when we get together with somebody that has a unique thing to offer, a unique occupation. I found a gentleman now that pretty much does everything from the sky. Aerial, drone. I was going to say footage because that's what I gravitate to, photos and footage, but there's so many other things that he offers in terms of drone services, right down to inspections. We're going to get into all of that. Adrian Odell joins us here on the program today. How are you doing?
Oh, doing good. It's a nice warm day, getting away from the rain. So hopefully I can enjoy the rest of the weather and go from there.
Yo, I'm doing great. That brings up a point I always wondered about. Can you fly a drone in the rain?
Yes. There are more enterprise level drones that are built for that. They have IPS ratings that allow for that type of operation. A lot of the smaller, lower price drones cannot. Wouldn't be recommended, but there are some highly rated enterprise drones that enable that. So when you have if you think about a dangerous situation or a search and rescue, it's not going to wait for good weather. So some of those are outfitted to be able to operate those types of conditions, which I have one of my larger drones that is able to do that.
Wow. And then I would assume if you can do that, you can operate a drone in windy conditions, but I'm sure that's with the right conditions. Am I right in assuming that?
Yeah, so wind does have a factor. Each of the drones has its own wind rating. So there are, depending on the type of, operation you're doing. And again, in certain situations that demand for, immediacy, the wind, you're going to do the best that you can with that, but their larger drones are better equipped for it. A lot of times people buy the small drones, and that's where you hear the flyaways or situations that come up where the drone just really wasn't designed or built for that. I mean, you think about it just the same way a commercial airline experiences turbulence, your drone's going to do the same thing. So you want to check those types of ratings and make sure ahead of time what you can and can't do with that particular piece of equipment.
So we're going to get into all of the services that you offer, but I'm curious. Airspace, I know there are some regulations where you can fly and you can't fly. Have you ever encountered a situation where it was a no drone fly zone?
Yeah, so I do a lot of work here in Columbus around airports, and airports have no-fly zones or restricted zones, or at least that's how they are traditionally set up. Now, as a commercially licensed pilot, there are ways of asking for permission to fly in those areas. So you can submit unlock requests, which will give you the opportunity to, for lack of a better term, get permission to unlock a zone and fly in those areas. So when I have roof inspections or pavement inspections that are close to airports or attached to airports, then I just get advanced permission to fly in those particular situations.
Did I hear you say commercially licensed pilot?
Yes.
That's you?
That's me.
I had no idea.
Everybody, yeah. So a misconception because of the fact a lot of times people think of a drone as a toy, but as a work instrument, you have to actually go through the process of getting Part 107 licensed or certified in that standpoint. So there are credentials that you can go through the FAA. A lot of that information is similar book knowledge to what an airline pilot goes through, but you don't have the manned flight hours to back it up. But you do have to, in order to operate a drone commercially or really for anything that is not considered recreational, you have to have your Part 107.
Wow. Okay. Wasn't aware of that. I knew there had to be some kind of regulation certification. What's required in getting that 107?
Yeah, it's mostly book knowledge. It's talking to you more about what you can and cannot do. So the things that we were talking about, flying in restricted zones and looking at airspace, because as soon as that drone takes off, you're now in FAA space. So all of that is regulated by the Federal Aviation Authority, and they dictate what you can and can't do. So you have to be aware of that. In many cases, there are violations of that. People are like, well, I didn't know I couldn't do that. Well, your responsibility to learn that you couldn't. You think about that from the standpoint of driving a car. Right. There's things that you can and can't do. There's posted 35 mile per hour, 55 mile per hour, but you can physically operate your car at faster speeds. Similar principles apply to the drone. There's things that you can do with it, but then there are the legal requirements to operate your drone as well.
So, and I deeply want to get into some of the things that you can do with that drone, because there are many things that I'm sure we don't even realize. Tell us, Adrian, about your journey uh, from the beginning of becoming a pilot and then to where you are now.
So things started for me. I was in Belize, Central America. I was working with a land developer there, and he had brought in an airline pilot. And I'm like, why do you need an airline pilot to fly a drone? And that's when I realized, much as usual, I was unawares that you had to actually have certain credentials to operate in a commercial capacity. So that's kind of where my curiosity got piqued. I saw him operating the drone and things that he was doing. In that case, was mapping out vacant land parcels and using that in the construction development pipeline because essentially they needed to know things like elevation, what is the soil information. They needed information in order to build or to get site works together for those particular pieces of construction. They needed that information, and a drone was able to map that with pretty accurate data using GPS coordinates on the drone to be able to get exact coordinates or relatively accurate coordinates on there. So that kind of got me started. When I saw that particular, opportunity come up, I said, well, what do I have to do? So when I came back to the States, I picked up my first drone and said, I want to get something of a high enough quality that I can provide a quality output. So I didn't get the cheapest drone that I could find, but I got, a pretty good commercial grade entry level drone that got me started. And from there, I started doing construction based video footage, site planning, working with the earthworks and things like that, just planning out sites and marking things up for people. And then it progressed. I think the big thing that really pushed me more into the commercial space outside of being, kind of an experienced hobbyist was COVID-19. So
Mm.
I lost my job at that time. I says, well, have drone willing to fly. So I had to start marketing relatively quickly, to which I came across a roofing company and started doing roof inspections as my startup piece. And then one thing led to another, started doing more video work, learning different ways to apply the inspection workflow to a variety of operations. So kind
Wow.
of just being open to the possibilities really is what helped out here. Because there's a lot of things that are being done now that weren't being done 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Oh, totally. And you think of it's you just opened the door to so many ideas popping around in my mind what drone footage or a view from the sky can do, right down to inspections. There's things where people can't even get into where a drone can. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, we have our video and photography. That's, we understand that, but all these other thermal imaging, right? That's another thing you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the commercial space really, to me, breaks down into two areas. You have your creative side, and then you have the data side. On the creative side, it's your traditional video. You see a lot of drone work in movies. You might not even know that it's drone work, but you see a lot of your high pace, fast action scenes. Different vantage points are shot by drone. Um, and then you get into the data side of things, and the data side of things is really expansive right now. Like I say, similar mapping applications that are applied to agriculture, that are applied to roofing situations, infrastructure inspections. So a lot of these things are now able to be done by drones, which are much faster, more accurate, less manpower that is able to be done. So it's
Hmm.
a cost saving to a lot of companies to be able to integrate drones. It's just getting people to understand that, yeah, a drone can do that.
Virtual tours. That's something else that you offer. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that was another kind of COVID-19 baby because we weren't doing a lot of things in person. So we started making 360 virtual walkthroughs of homes,
Oh,
mostly using a real estate standpoint or even some commercial properties so that people could see these things more or less sight unseen. So you could create a digital link, share out the entire walkthrough of a building, work really good for real estate companies because, if people could virtually view a home, virtually, well, not all virtual purchasing of a home, but it made it a lot easier to share that type of content with individuals that weren't able to be there in person. So that actually helps a lot with site planning on construction sites as well. There's more virtual walkthroughs of properties that are shared with property managers, construction companies. So that same technology is being applied in a variety of places even now.
even for the real estate industry, some of the pricier places, just seeing what it looks like. I recently saw one. I'm in between houses right now. I
Mhm.
sold a house, just was the right time. Now it's time for another one. And I saw footage from the sky, and it totally changed my view of this property. because I thought it was more of in a congested area. When I saw it from the sky, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like lots of space around it. There's lots of trees. I didn't
Hmm.
even realize that. So, taking a look at anything from a different perspective, it can be a game changer in terms of sales, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing, like who doesn't like the window seat when you're in a plane, you know? And that's the
Oh yeah.
curiosity to look out and see, you know, what does it look like from up here? And just having that unique vantage point, really now a much easier way of being able to do that from the palms of your hand and being able to view that through the eyes of a drone. So it's really opening up a lot of opportunities for people to see things differently.
What is the most unusual or unique request that you've gotten to provide a drone for?
We got a call to look for somebody's lost mule. And it was about an hour away. And yeah, so you know, little Betsy had got out, and they're wanting to find her. And we used the thermal
Ah,
we used the thermal capabilities of the drone to basically look through those dense areas to be able to find the mule. Now, I will say we did not find her, but that's I think one of the strangest things. Not strange, but it was
yeah.
just it's
What
like
I
hey,
would
I
have,
heard you could do this.
I
So
would have never
yeah.
thought about that. Um,
Hmm.
but you know what? Even though you weren't able to find her, at the same time, at least it was closure because you can't cover all that area in the same way
Yeah.
that you can, especially with the thermal imaging. And thanks for sharing that part of it, because I would wonder, like, as you're flying that drone, how are you able to see all these different areas? Because the drone is moving at a certain speed, but with thermal imaging, I would have to imagine that that's going to stand out.
Yeah, so we're looking for the heat differences there. And the hard thing about this particular space that we were looking in is there's heavy tree cover. So it doesn't mean that she wasn't there. It just means that we could not see her from there. But the other thing that I had wanted more involvement for was the owner. They went off on other mules to look. I says, well, if you can help point me in the right direction, we'll have a higher chance of doing so. But I was just left to my own, devices to try to find,
Sure.
where she was. And I found a lot of deer, found a lot of cow, found a lot of other things, but just was not able to find that specific
Yeah,
missing mule.
right. And
So
she might not have been in that area now anyway,
right.
you
And
know?
we did a wide scope. So that's the thing about it is you can cover a large area. And that's more or less what I was asking for is kind of where is the last place you remember seeing her? And we go from there. The same principles apply when you're looking for people. If Granny walks out of the house and forgets where she's going, drones are used in that capacity as well.
I I want to learn more about this. What's the highest the drone can fly, or the highest you've ever flown? No reference. I mean, obviously not the height of a plane, but
Yeah.
when they talk about planes, 30,000 feet. So we have that reference point. No idea on the drone.
So the legal limit is 400 feet, and the technical definition of that is 400 feet above a a takeoff point or a structure. For instance, there was a 600-foot tower that I was inspecting. So with that, the tower being the subject matter, I can apply to fly above that 400 foot. And the reason for that is it's the class of airspace. Once you get above 400 feet, you're in a different class of airspace and you need permission to operate in that airspace. So usually when you watch airplanes take off, they're going to ascend to, they'll say 30,000 feet or where they get to, but they're ascending up to a commercial airspace to where they can operate. And we are required to stay underneath that airspace. Now, again, the drone can fly higher than that, but that is the legal limit that you're supposed to stay within.
Hmm. What's the highest the drone could, if you were okay to go in that airspace, what do you think, ballpark, the highest any drone? And I'm talking about not the highest level, highest priced, drone, but it's on an average decent price drone, the highest it possibly go.
I'm not 100% certain, but what I will say is high as the signal is able to transmit to the drone, because that'll be your difference. What will happen is you could
Hmm.
probably fly it relatively high, but at some point, the connection between your remote and your drone will disappear. Now, for me, if I get into a situation like that, any distance, if it's farther away from me or higher up, I have it programmed to do a return to home. So it'll reach a certain point where it will stop and it will return back to the home point where it took off from.
So I have to imagine too, if your battery's going down, it knows ahead of time. It's like, all right, wait a minute, I got to go back. I got to go back to Adrian before I
Yeah.
run out.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it'll do things like that. You can program like I usually have mine. Once my battery gets to about 20%, it starts letting me know, hey, it's about that time. But
Yep.
in most of your commercial application drones, they have that technology built into it. It knows roughly based on the distance it is away from you, how long it takes to get back to you in reasonable conditions, and
Yep.
will do things to where it automatically returns. Obviously, you can change those settings, but I keep those kinds of things on for safety because there's always safety first, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Have you ever had uh, an accident with a drone? I don't mean like you hit
Absolutely.
something, but yeah, you lost a
Absolutely.
drone or something. Yeah. What stands out in your
Absolutely.
mind?
Yeah. So I've done, I can remember three cases where something came up. One thing, most of these situations are operator error or pilot stupidity. So I'll blame myself here. One thing that I did is in calibrating the drone, I went to update the software. And while the software was updating, I took off. So what the software does when it's done updating is it shuts off the propellers. So
Oh,
it just,
oh.
so I was actually inspecting the roof at my parents' house, and the drone stopped. He goes, whee. So
Oh, painful.
yeah, so I remember that case. And then
So
sometimes like
I
on my,
have to find out. But I have to find out. So propeller stop. It's coming down, right? Did we have was that the end of that drone or what happened?
oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. It usually does not survive the higher altitude. Anything over, I'll say 20, 30 feet, highly unlikely that it is able to
Wow.
withstand that. So um yeah,
You know,
lost
I'm
that guy.
actually surprised with the technology and even the fact that, amazingly that it can tell you I got 20% battery left and, in drone talk, I know how much it's going to take me to get back, in terms of wind speed and everything. I'm going to come back to you. I got enough battery for that. You would think that with the software update, it might tell you drone shutting off now. Yes or no? You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
my computer's not going to reboot typically. I get the notification every day. We've installed updates. Do you want to schedule? Do you want to shut down now? And I just keep putting it off. I shouldn't, but whatever.
Yeah.
You would think. I'm surprised.
And advances in technology, and like I say, that was it was my Phantom 4 that I had at the time. And I've had three different iterations of that drone. So I'm sure
Okay.
it's built into and that's one of the things is a lot of technological advances, you don't know you need them until you do.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yep.
you get enough reports of, we should probably build this into there to where
Right.
you couldn't, because it's one of those things like you would assume it's a no-brainer to not do something like that. But experience ends up being the thing that teaches you
Sure.
shouldn't do that. So in these cases, like I say, I think advances in drone technology get you to that point where while that update is taking place. Matter of fact, I think my Mavic 3 series, they will not allow you to take off while that's doing it. So I think
Mm,
it's evolved.
sure,
It
sure.
just at that time it wasn't available.
Real quick, one other story of a drone mishap.
I had my big guy out on a roof inspection. It was actually at a Home Depot. Um, and in that particular case, the heights were set lower than I would have liked, but you usually try to stick to the shot list as best you can. In this case, there's an alternating terrain. So hindsight being 2020, I could have programmed the drone to adjust to the terrain, still been okay. But in this case, this was the largest drone that I have, the M210 RTK. It's a pretty big guy, carries two cameras, has two batteries that are built into it.
Wow.
So once it gets moving, it's a little bit harder for it to stop. You kind of got that traveling, so to speak. Same thing if you're driving a car and you hit the brakes, it doesn't always stop right away, depending on how fast it's going. So in this case, I'm like, you know what? These trees are awfully close. I should probably. So I hit my pause. Drone comes to a stop, but it's close enough to a branch that it catches the branch. And then, of course, it's about 32 pounds. Well, no, maybe not that high. It's 20 some odd pounds ish, maybe in the air with both cameras on it. So it falls down and,
Ouch. I feel
yeah,
the
no.
pain. I feel the
And that
pain.
was $42,000 in the air.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I have to ask this question. I mean, I'm fascinated, learning a lot here. And we'll back to the projects in a moment. However, insurance, got that?
hmm
Yeah, all good?
Yeah. Insurance is an absolute must across the board. And I do it a variety of ways. DJI is the number one, manufacturer of drones,
Sure.
subject to change depending on this legislation that's going on. Um, but I usually get insurance through them, which covers replacements. And then I get insurance through a third party provider, so
Yeah.
there's the insurance that essentially covers the drone and replacing it, and then your liability insurance to cover any properties, any damage to anything else. So um, I tend not to fly without insurance. You can do insurance by the job as well, but yeah,
Mm,
you got too much gear in the air, too many things that can go wrong. Granted, usually doesn't, but it's always the safe and prudent way to go about things by having insurance.
I mean, the price of that particular drone, that's more than some cars. And you have
Yep.
insurance on, you
Yeah.
can't drive your car without insurance. You
There you
wouldn't.
go.
Uh, wow. With inspections, what are some of the things that you found or uncovered or maybe surprised the client with? Anything that stands out in your mind?
Uh, with thermal inspections, particularly, you're looking for a lot of cases that I do roof anomalies. You're looking at wet spots or moisture accumulation or areas that are overly hot that are on a roof. You'll find things. Usually, at that point, you can pick out things relatively easy because you have super hot points that are things on there. I've been doing a lot of inspections of, say, solar panels, solar shingles. They're looking for anomalies within those units as well. Those are the things that come up. Bridge inspections,
Hmm.
I've only done a soft inspection in that regard, but you're looking for structural integrity or issues that, well, one, from the standpoint, not that a human can't do that. It's just that drone can be programmed to do it in a fraction of the time, and I can provide digital twins. So that's the other thing. You can create a 3D model. So in that case, I created a 3D model of that bridge with all of the image attached to it, send that off to the client. So they can go through each image, make their annotations, and see, oh, here it
Wow.
is. So,
Wow.
if you forgot something in your inspection on site, what do you do? But with that digital twin, you got that as a reference point forever.
My gosh. I'm connected to some people that have drones, but it's always on the creative side. I didn't even know this other side existed. And people like you blend the two. If you need creative, yes, we can take
Yeah.
awesome pictures, awesome video, but also we can do all those other things as well. Um, you're located, give me it's Ohio, parts of Ohio
Yeah,
and
Columbus.
Columbus.
Columbus,
Okay,
Ohio. So we got a lot of construction going on here. So it's a good location to be in.
cool.
Yeah.
If somebody's watching, listening, and let's say they're not in that area, but they want services that are done right and professionally, would you be able to travel if it makes sense?
Yeah, I can travel. I usually go between Kentucky, Indiana, Michigan. So as I spread out my pilot network, I've got individuals that I work with in a variety of places, but we can travel. We've even been out of the country, going back to Belize and worked on some projects as well. So
Wow. Yeah. Very exciting. As a commercial pilot, this has got to be so cool for you.
it's a lot of fun. It's one of those things like, it feels like a toy. It operates a lot like that, but there's so much that can be done. And
Yeah.
that's what's exciting about it. And that's one of the things that I work a lot with local students in education and STEM training and whatnot. And that's one of the things that I try to tell them. It's like, look, let your imagination go because what happens is there are solutions that haven't even been thought of yet that are going to be, for instance, we were just at an agriculture event. We were talking about using spray drones to apply pesticides, fungicides to fields. But first, it takes a data analysis of that field, which is also done by drone. So, in one standpoint, I can map out, 100 acres of farmland, and I can find out where the wet spots are, the dry spots are. I can find out where there are invasive types of insects, and then I
Wow.
can program a sprayer drone to go spray just that area. You see, this is how we're helping farmers to be more efficient and what they're doing. Because as I'm listening to farmers, they're like, yeah, my combine has a 5-foot clearance. So if I have, or my sprayer, this sprayer had a 5-foot clearance. If he has crop that's over 5 foot, he has to knock out his own crop just to spray. You see, the drone can fly at an appropriate height. You don't lose any of that. And that's what I'm saying. So a lot of these guys are like, I didn't know you could do that.
I didn't know you could do that.
5 years ago, nobody knew you could do that. And so now that's what's happening. And so there's a lot of advancement that's taking place. And, our students that are out there right now, they're going to be the brains and the minds that come up with the solutions for tomorrow. So I'm just as passionate about helping students build what is going to be here tomorrow as I am about flying myself. Because, I can't do this forever, but I can train the next generation to be part of that solution.
That is amazing. Adrian, how do we find you? How do we contact you?
So I can be reached through my website, Aroaerial, AROAERIAL at gmail.com is the email. Aroaerial.com is the website. Phone number, my direct number is 419-612-8379. And then I have a separate line for the business, which is 614-622-8786.
Fascinating talking with you today. Learned so much. Like this went so much deeper than I ever thought in terms of what can be done and we just scraped the surface. There's many other things that we even get to. So hopefully next time we'll hit that up. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.